Last summer, I cleared a 4-year aphid and ant infestation out of my brassica bed in just under 9 days using a powder that cost me $2 and change at the grocery store. The bed had been hammered every spring. I tried neem, I tried insecticidal soap, I tried hand picking, I tried ladybug releases. Nothing held. Then I pulled out a small white container of boric acid, mixed it with sugar and warm water, and the colony that had been farming those aphids was gone inside a week. Here's the part that stopped me cold. When I started looking into why no one talks about this anymore, I found that boric acid has been quietly restricted or heavily regulated for outdoor garden use in 19 states, tied up in pesticide registration rules that most home gardeners never hear about. Meanwhile, the same powder has been used for pest control for over 1,000 years, starting with Tibetan borax miners in the 8th century. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I use this $2 pantry powder to shut down ants, aphids, roaches, earwigs, squash bugs, and cutworms in a backyard garden without poisoning the soil. And stay with me to the end because there's one old Tibetan addition to the bait recipe that roughly tripled my kill rate and almost nobody uses it. Now let me back up, because I didn't come to this easily. For close to 20 years, I fought garden pests the way most folks do. I sprayed. I bought whatever was on the shelf at the garden centre. When that stopped working, I went organic and sprayed neem oil every 5 days on everything that moved. I lost whole crops to squash bugs. I lost a beautiful row of kale to aphids 3 summers running. If you've been in that loop, I'm not judging you. I was right there with you, spending money and watching it wash off in the next rain. What changed things was stumbling onto a 1948 agricultural extension bulletin in a used bookstore in central Pennsylvania. It mentioned boric acid bait the way we now mention drip irrigation, like it was obvious, standard, and universally used. That bulletin sent me down a rabbit hole, and what I found completely reset my thinking. Here's the short version of the history because it matters for how we use this stuff. Borax was pulled out of dry lake beds in Tibet as far back as the 8th century. Tibetan traders hauled it across the Himalayas into Persia and eventually into Europe, where it was used for everything from preserving meat to cleaning wool to, yes, killing insects. By the 1800s, borax deposits were being mined in Death Valley, California, and refined into boric acid, a whiter, finer, more concentrated powder. Then, in the 1940s and 50s, agricultural researchers, including teams at Purdue and the United States Department of Agriculture, ran field trials. What they found was that boric acid at very low concentrations, somewhere between 1 and 5% in a sugar bait, wiped out entire ant colonies within 7 to 10 days. It worked by disrupting the insect's digestive tract and damaging its exoskeleton from the inside out. And because it's a mineral, not a nerve agent, insects can't build resistance to it the way they do with synthetic pesticides. So why don't we hear about it? Simple. Boron is a micronutrient in soil, but in large quantities it can build up and hurt plants. State regulators, worried about farm-scale misuse and groundwater contamination, quietly pulled outdoor pesticide registrations in many states. The product stayed legal for indoor ant traps, but the garden use, the stuff those old extension bulletins taught, got buried. Home gardeners using teaspoons are not the problem the regulators were worried about. But the knowledge went dark anyway. All right, here's how I actually use it. The first thing you need to understand is that there are 2 powders people confuse, and getting this wrong will cost you results. Borax is sodium tetraborate, the laundry aisle product in the green and white box. Boric acid is the refined version, a finer, purer powder, sold for roach and ant control in hardware stores and online. For garden pest work, you want boric acid, not borax. A 1-pound container runs about $2 to $4 and will last you 3 full seasons in a backyard garden. Look for the label that says 99% boric acid, technical grade. Avoid anything with added fragrance, repellents, or unknown carriers. You want the plain white powder, nothing else. Now let me show you exactly how to build the bait that shut down my ant problem. This is the sugar water method, and it's the single most effective use of boric acid for outdoor gardening. The reason it works comes down to ant biology. Ants farm aphids. They move them around, protect them from ladybugs, and drink the sugary honeydew the aphids secrete. If you kill only the aphids, you see, the ants will import more the next day. You have to take out the colony. Here's the exact recipe I use. 1 cup of warm water. 3 tablespoons of white sugar, dissolved completely. 1 teaspoon of boric acid powder, stirred in until it disappears. That's it. That's a 1% solution, which is low enough that worker ants carry it back to the nest before they die. And that's what takes the queen down. Soak cotton balls in the mixture. Place them in small, shallow lids, like the caps off a peanut butter jar. Set those lids on the soil near the ant trail, tucked under a rock or a piece of wood so rain doesn't dilute them and so kids and pets leave them alone. You'll want 3 to 4 stations per raised bed. Within about 48 hours, you'll see a wild surge of ant activity at the stations. That's not bad news. That's the signal that it's working. They're hauling it home. By day 7 to 9, the trails will be empty and the aphids, without their protectors, collapse under natural predator pressure. Next comes the dusting technique, and this one is for direct contact with soft-bodied pests. For squash bugs, cucumber beetles, earwigs, and cutworms hiding at the base of plants, I use the dry powder. Take about a quarter teaspoon of boric acid and dust it lightly around the base of the plant stem, never on the leaves and never near flowers where pollinators forage. A small plastic squeeze bottle with a narrow tip, the kind chefs use for sauces, makes this easy. The powder sticks to insect exoskeletons and disrupts their outer waxy layer, causing them to dehydrate over 24 to 72 hours. The conventional approach is to spray a broad-spectrum insecticide that kills pollinators, predators, and soil life alongside your target. The suppressed approach is precision placement of a targeted mineral where pollinators don't go. Huge difference in what your garden looks like after. Reapply after heavy rain because water dilutes and disperses the powder. In a typical Pennsylvania summer, I dust maybe 4 or 5 times the entire season. Now, before I walk you through the rest, I want to stop for just a second. What I'm showing you today is one piece of something bigger. I put everything I've learned over the last 30 years of backyard growing into a book called The 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It's 115 pages covering soil biology, strategic pruning, companion planting systems, succession schedules, and the actual science behind why each method works. Folks have used it to roughly double their harvest out of the same square footage, no new beds, no fancy gear. If that sounds like what you're after, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below. It's $17, and I genuinely think it'll change what your garden does next season. All right, let's keep going. The third method I want to walk you through is the perimeter barrier, and this is how you stop invasions before they start. Around the outside of each raised bed, I lay a thin, dry line of boric acid powder, about 1/8 of an inch wide and maybe 2 inches in from the wood frame. This creates a mineral barrier that ants, slugs, and earwigs won't cross once they've had contact. 1 pound of boric acid will lay a perimeter around roughly 8 4x8 raised beds. The reason this works, and the reason old gardeners swore by it, is that insects have to physically cross that line to reach your plants. They pick up the powder on their legs and bodies and they're done. You want this line dry, so apply it on a sunny morning and reapply after any rain over a 1/4 inch. If you're in the warmer zones, say 7 through 10, where ant pressure is extreme and active year-round, reapply every 3 to 4 weeks during the growing season. In cooler zones 3 through 6, 1 application in spring and 1 in midsummer is usually enough. The fourth piece is soil protection, because this is where most folks mess up. Boron is a plant micronutrient. Your vegetables need it, but only in tiny amounts. Too much boron causes yellowing leaves, stunted growth, and in severe cases, plant death. The rule I live by is simple. Never work boric acid into your soil, never. It goes on top, in targeted spots, in baits, or around perimeters. It does not get tilled in. If you stick to that rule, the total amount of boron reaching your soil in a season is a fraction of a teaspoon spread over an entire bed, well below any threshold that would affect your plants. The fifth and final piece is protecting your beneficial insects. Don't place bait stations near flowering plants where bees forage. Don't dust anything that's in bloom. Work at dusk or early morning when pollinators are least active. And always cover your bait stations with a rock, a tile, or an upturned flower pot with a small entry hole cut in the side so pollinators can't wander in. All right, now let me talk about the common mistakes, because I made every single one of these. The first pattern I see, and I did this myself for years, is spraying aphids directly without touching the ants. You knock down the visible population, feel good about yourself, and they're back in 4 days because the colony is still there, re-importing livestock. The old method always went after the farmer, not the crop. The second pattern is confusing borax with boric acid. Folks read a blog post, grab the laundry borax, dump it into sugar water at way too high a concentration, and kill the worker ants before they can carry it home. The colony survives. You want slow, not fast. 1%, not 10%. The third pattern is over-application. More is not better. If you dump tablespoons of boric acid around a tomato plant, you'll hurt the plant. This was lost knowledge because the old extension bulletins gave exact doses, and when those bulletins went out of print, people guessed. Guessing with minerals ends badly. The fourth pattern is applying during rain or heavy dew. Boric acid needs to stay dry to work as a contact dust and a perimeter barrier. If it's going to rain that afternoon, wait. Work with the weather, not against it. Now here's the bonus tip I promised you at the start, and this is the single piece that took my results from good to almost ridiculous. When I was digging through those old Tibetan borax trade records, I found references to a paste traders used, not just powdered borax and water, but borax mixed with a heavy, unrefined cane sugar. In India, they call it jaggery. In North America, the closest easy substitute is blackstrap molasses. Here's what I do now. To my standard bait recipe, 1 cup of warm water, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of boric acid, I add 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses, stir until dissolved. The reason this works is that ants and roaches are drawn to complex sugars and trace minerals far more strongly than to plain white sugar alone. The molasses makes the bait roughly 3 times more attractive in side-by-side tests I ran in my own yard. Colonies that took 9 or 10 days to collapse on plain sugar bait were done in 5 or 6 days once I added the molasses. Try it. That one change is the difference between a bait station that works and a bait station that empties by sundown. So here's where I want to leave you. Everything I showed you today, the bait, the dust, the perimeter, the molasses trick, is one chapter of how I run my garden now. If you want the full system, the soil biology, the pruning cuts that push yield, the companion planning that keeps pests down to begin with, the succession schedules that keep a bed producing from April through October, all of that is in the 30-day maximum yield protocol. 115 pages, $17, written for folks with existing beds who just want more out of them. Scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description below. I wrote it because I wish someone had handed it to me 20 years ago. Last summer, that brassica bed, the one I'd been losing every spring for 4 years, gave me the heaviest kale harvest I've ever pulled off a 4x8 space. $2 of powder, a cotton ball, and a spoonful of molasses. That's it. Tell me in the comments what pest is giving you the most trouble this season, and I'll share what's worked for me. See you in the next one.